On this edition of the program, World War III is canceled, why the New York City Mayoral Democratic Primary matters, and the CEO of C-SPAN joins the program. It's a great episode. It's all coming up.
The following is brought to you by Just Another Pilot.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for June 25th, 2025. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you on this fine Tuesday. We're going to try and get this out ASAP for you before the New York City mayoral results come in tonight, because I want to lay out some general stuff and my thoughts on the race, get a little prediction in there, and then we will be back if there's a big upset, which there very well might be. I don't know. But obviously, the big news is what is happening in D.C. We will be joined by the C-SPAN CEO a little bit later to talk about the future of that company. Obviously, we are gigantic C-SPAN fans here. But we begin with the end of the 12-day war. Good Lord. In between our Friday episode and this episode, we have the bombing of Iran by the United States of America. And now a ceasefire that wobbles, but eventually holds. On our Sunday edition, I talked about the political fault lines that were emerging over the bombing over Iran, and they were interesting. You know, we have said before that Donald Trump's two big things that were different than any other Republican that came before him in modern times was non-interventionalism and immigration hardliner. We're going to continue to find out what happens on the immigration hardliner perspective, but the idea of a protracted military conflict that involved American boots on the ground, well, like, that was on the table after we bombed the 3 nuclear facilities in Iran. And now it seems off the table. So let's talk about where we are. I actually want to play this for you. This is something that we did play on the Sunday edition. Support us on Substack if you would like to get those 2 episodes each and every week for only $3 a week. But I'm going to play this for you. This was a supercut of people that I would charitably describe as Donald Trump critics. You could say more accurately, they hate his guts. You could say probably even more accurately, they are professional Donald Trump haters, in that they get mostly on television when they criticize Donald Trump. This is what they were saying on the Sunday shows.
Right. Well, I think because of the launching of Iran's war against Israel on October the 7th in 2023, it was going to come down to this at some point anyway. This is Iran's effort to go after the little Satan, and the next target was the big Satan. So Israel really faces an existential threat from a nuclear Iran. But Iran is not just Israel's problem. Iran is the world's problem. It's particularly the U.S. problem, and we have now acted against this nuclear proliferation threat. It's clearly the right thing to do, and if Netanyahu is going in first, help persuade the president, so much the better.
And I think that the president deserves an enormous amount of credit. This is against type for him. I'm sure it was a difficult decision. But what I think his analysis was he cannot live with a nuclear weaponed Iran. And Israel did all the heavy lifting. They wiped out any of their air defenses, really severely damaged them in what they've been doing over the last week and a half or two. And the president saw an opportunity that he might never have again.
But yeah, I think one of the things that drives me crazy in foreign policy, and it always has, I was critical of my own party when, Obama went into Libya, is it seems like people oppose a president just based on his party. And if you truly oppose the strikes in Iran, I respect that. I fully understand it and respect it. It's when somebody opposes something because somebody of the other party is doing it on foreign policy, particularly, that I think that's where it gets a little dangerous. So I do think this was the right move, very limited. I think now just defending American troops in the region, trying to sue for peace with Iran, and I think that would be the right move.
That is Chris Christie, John Bolton, Adam Kinzinger, all saying Donald Trump did a good thing on Saturday night. Go ahead and add to the list Jeb Bush, who was thanked by Donald Trump on Truth Social today. So you have never Trumpers, people that don't like Donald Trump, that liked what happened here. And part of the reason is that this brand of never Trumper has been run out of the party at some level by personal animus, at some level because of disgust of how 2020 was carried out, but largely because Donald Trump's role in modern politics is to do the thing that nobody else would do. And he continually did things that nobody else would do that pissed these people off. And now he did a thing that nobody else would do that made them happy. Sometimes it's simple, but that came at the cost of alienating the non-interventionalist voices, the America First voices within his own party. Among them, Mike Cernovich, Steve Bannon, and probably most notably, Tucker Carlson, somebody who has had a pretty ingrained role within the second Donald Trump presidency. It was Tucker Carlson who said that bombing these nuclear facilities, the ones that Trump bombed on Sunday or Saturday night, would lead to, among other things, World War III, $30 a gallon gas, and tens of thousands of dead Americans that would be killed by Iran within the first 48 hours. To do this would be apocalyptic. It would not only be the end of Donald Trump's presidency, as he would be drawn in and defined by this conflict, but quite possibly the end of America. Well, I'm recording this on Tuesday. Gas is cheaper. No Americans right now are dead. And it looks like there is a ceasefire. So the anti-war voices, depending on how you figure it, were less or more influential. Essentially, what I said in a YouTube video that we put out on Sunday was that I was viewing this politically as Qasem Soleimani times 10. So it was more consequential than Qasem Soleimani. And part of the reason why was that killing Qasem Soleimani back in 2020 took out the Quds Force. All right, so we're going to do basic idiot version of foreign policy here. Iran's goal is to kill Israel, right? And so the way that they did it through the Quds Force was to fund, train, and arm proxy armies throughout the region. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they did it for Assad in Syria, and there's one of them in Iraq. There's a famous clip apparently that is circulating amongst Israelis right now in which one of the Iranian military heads says that Soleimani has set up 6 armies between Israel and Iran Israel would have to fight through all of them without the international community pulling their chain. They will not be able to do that. Glory to the supreme leader. Well, Soleimani takes a missile in the ear in 2020. And at that time, the question was whether or not we had started World War III. We didn't. America didn't put boots on the ground. Iran fired a bunch of missiles at a base in Iraq, and that was pretty much it. Now, there were rumors that, not rumors, the Biden FBI said that Iranian assassins were trying to kill Donald Trump, but by and large, we did not get the protracted military conflict a la Iraq or Afghanistan. And what I said on Sunday was that was where my priors were. Okay, this is a more intense Soleimani. So maybe this one would push America into putting boots on the ground. Because if the killing of Soleimani represented American force taking out a core plank of what Iran wanted to do, then the destruction of the nuclear facilities is far more important to Iran. From the story that they are telling to their own people, from the story that they are telling to the Arab world, the nuclearization of Iran would be the deterrent that would keep the flame alive for their revolution, their Islamic revolution, their Shia Islamic revolution. And now it's gone. Done. Over. They could start to try to rebuild it again, but this was a program that was decades in the making, and now it will be decades before they can get back to the point that they were at on Friday. And so you assumed, all right, here we go again. Then comes Monday. And we essentially saw a repeat of what happened with Soleimani. Except now, instead of an Iraqi base, it was CENTCOM in Qatar. But just like that attack back in 2020, it was coordinated with the people that Iran was shooting the missiles at. They told the Qataris. They told us. And it's only within hours of Iran bravely firing back at the Americans, or that's how their state television told it, that a ceasefire is reached. Not only between Qatar mediating with Iran, but the United States mediating with Israel. Donald Trump puts out a truth in which he very aggressively brands the 12-day war that has been brought to an end. Now there's rocky stuff that happens after that. Israel says, okay, well, we have a few things in place, so we can't pull them all back. Israel hits Iran very hard. Iran responds. Donald Trump wakes up to see that Israel is going to respond to Iran's response. Curses on television, which we will talk to Sam at C-SPAN about, but is able to pull Israel back. He says that they will plane wave. Israel symbolically hits a tower in Iran, but right now it looks like there is indeed a ceasefire in the region. So World War III is canceled. I joked before that the metaphor here was the Rick and Morty bit where Rick convinces Morty to go on a quick 15-minute adventure in and out in the show. Then there's a smash cut to them scream crying with beards, showing that what they just got into was the most horrific, awful thing that they could possibly imagine. But in this version, Rick convinces Morty to go on a 15-minute adventure, and then you just cut to the credits. That's it. They did. That was it. A few things that I want to hit before we move on from this, because always we are looking at a domestic focus. Before we do, let me just offer this possible read on the situation. Donald Trump pulled Israel's chain. That's something that the White House has really not done a lot of past October 7th. October 7th, Israel had a very wide berth, longer and wider than any other time that they have interacted with neighboring militias like Hamas or Hezbollah. And October 7th was what gave them that purchase. But Trump was not pleased. Trump told Israel and was loud about saying, Israel, you are not going to respond, and Israel didn't respond. I don't know whether or not this is going to be the case, but it reminded me of how Donald Trump has treated the pro-life movement after Roe versus Wade was overturned. Donald Trump's message to them was, nobody else would do this. Everybody else gave you lip service. I did it. Now shut up and play ball. Nobody else would actually bomb Iran's nuclear facilities. Everybody paid you lip service. I did it. Now shut up and play ball. Who knows whether or not that is going to be the way that Donald Trump treats Israel from here on out? We will see. We only have 5 minutes of evidence there. But it is certainly something kind of crazy. So domestically, what Donald Trump wants to do, and the reason why I believe he put as much of an exclamation point on the 12 days war branding, is because he wants this to be over. He doesn't want there to be a conversation about, are we going to put boots on the ground? He wants to put this in the rearview mirror. That was a thing that happened. Nobody else would end it. I ended the war before it began. We're done. Over. Next. Because he wants to be focusing on his domestic agenda. The one big beautiful bill is going to be voted on in the Senate sometime this week. Most likely, it does not look like anything that came out of the House. The House says they can't pass it. The Senate is saying, who cares? He wants to deal with that because he is the closer, he is the fixer when it comes to all things legislative. All right. So we're going to get to our update, and then we're going to get to our interview with Sam, the CEO of C-SPAN. But there is a big election happening this afternoon, or Tuesday afternoon as I'm recording this. It will be done by Tuesday night, possibly a Wednesday morning, more likely. And that is the Democratic Mayoral Primary in New York. We were going to go cover this. Then it looked boring. Then it got exciting. And then we wound up having to go visit family. So I didn't go. But one of the things that we hear a lot about is, why do I care? Why do I care? Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 reasons to care. But first, we have to set everything up. First things first. This is a battle between Andrew Cuomo and Zohran Mamdani. We've talked about it a few times on the podcast. But just so you are aware, if you have been tuning out with it, why isn't the current Democratic mayor of New York City running in the Democratic mayoral primary? Good question. That is Eric Adams. We covered that election 4 years ago. And the reason why he is not running is because he is unpopular with Democrats right now. He was not polling well against Andrew Cuomo. I think you could make an argument that he probably made a mistake. He probably should have just run against Andrew Cuomo and forgotten about the fact that he was polling poorly against him. Because as it turns out, Andrew Cuomo ran a terrible campaign, an awful campaign. So Zohran Mamdani, he's young. He's a Democratic socialist. He is running a change campaign. It's got some wild ideas. He is going to freeze the rent. He is going to make public transportation free. He is going to create a chain of city-owned grocery stores. Will he be able to do any of these things? No. By my estimation, no. However, he is running a very good campaign for the following reasons. Number one, he's charismatic. He had an acting career. He had a rap career. He is a performer, but he is naturally able to come through on camera. He has what they say in the business, it. He's also a hard worker. The videos that he has put out have been approachable. You want to root for him, even if you believe his ideas are crazy, and some of the ideas that he has are abhorrent, specifically to Jews. He's waffly on the idea of globalize the intifada, meaning we want to kill Jews in America. Still, you minimize your weaknesses, you accentuate your strengths, and you have a core thesis, which is New York needs radical change. It needs a breath of fresh air, a youthful revolution. Zohran is that guy. He is also just X's and O's, a great campaign. Guys, you know that is what I focus on the most. I don't focus on the ideology. I focus on the X's and O's. He did one of my favorite gimmicks. God, I am a sucker for I am going to walk a long time gimmicks. It's been done periodically throughout politics. To me, it always works. It probably works better in a social media age. He did it on Saturday. I believe he walked from the bottom of Manhattan to the top of Manhattan. It's a 14-mile walk. That is a long walk. Not a crazy walk, but he wound up being in a million different social media clips because everybody wanted to record a TikTok with him. He stopped for everybody. He had a gigantic media thing. I don't know, man. It's just always a good idea. If you want me to like your campaign, walk a long time. It's just, I don't know. It's a smart idea. All right. So that's how things are breaking out. The polling has been very close. So if I've told you all that, you're like, I don't live in New York City. Why do I care? What do I give a rat's ass? I'm going to give you 3 reasons. Number 1, out with the old, in with the new. We are at a point where, specifically in the Democratic Party, who has not gone through its revolution identity crisis like the Republicans did in 2016. That is coming now. What will be the future of the Democratic Party? That is up to the people that want to seize power. If you want to see a more progressive candidate, then this is it. If you want to see a more centrist candidate, if you want to see something like that, you need to go and take the heads of the elders. This is how politics works. Okay? And Democrats used to be a lot better at it than Republicans. They have gotten terrible at ossifying their leadership. That used to be the thing that Republicans did. That's how Republicans got out of touch. They ossified a leadership that decided from on high who got next. Andrew Cuomo has run an awful campaign. Every little X's and O's thing that I liked about the Mamdani campaign has been the opposite with Andrew Cuomo. He has no reason to run. He looks old. He looks tired. He looks mad. He's running a negative campaign against Mamdani, meaning that when he saw somebody in his back, in his rearview mirror, he got worse. Let me go back to Mamdani for 1 second. When Mamdani he had an interview with The Bulwark that went viral about him saying, well, intifada doesn't really mean a bloody revolution like it meant in the Middle East. It means struggle. And at the Holocaust Museum, when you translate it into Arabic, it says intifada about the Holocaust. That was a bad move for him. That was a negative element of his campaign. If he was running a worse campaign, he would have stunk into it and kept trying to defend it. Instead, he pivoted. He went to his strengths. That's a sign of a good campaign. Everything that Cuomo is doing, the exact opposite. Stinks on ice. All right. He doesn't have an answer for why he had to leave the stage in the first place. He doesn't have a reason why he's running now. Here's reason 2. And this is on either side. If you are terrified about progressive leadership, if you are for progressive leadership, Zohran has given you the playbook. He might not win this, but he has shown you how to talk about the positives of progressive policies without getting bogged down in the minutia that bores or terrifies people. You have to sell the positive vision in politics regardless of how you want to bring it to people. And progressives very often define themselves with their enemies. They define themselves with the negative. They don't define themselves with the positive. Zohran has done that. And here's the number 3. There are a lot of people who are listening to this who are for third parties. They are for a more diverse political world. Well, this is an election where ranked choice voting is going to matter. Now, will it bring about more centrist options? Probably not. Because the most centrist option that is on here right now is Andrew Cuomo, and he'll probably win the first ballot. But as everything collapses, at least by way of smart people that are watching this right now, Zohran might come out on top by a hair. I said on Twitter that if running campaigns effectively won you races, then Zohran would win in a landslide. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world where name ID matters. We live in a world where, especially in New York, ethnic and religious lines are very, very important. And so I will stick to the prediction that I made with Scrimshaw a few weeks ago. I do believe that it is Cuomo in a squeaker. I think that is an embarrassment for him. It's probably an embarrassment for the city as well. But we will have more on that in our Substack episode on Thursday, when we will break down all of not only the results to that election, but also where they go from here. Because if Zohran wins, I think a lot of time, money, and effort is going to go into that general. And I think that there's going to be a bunch of big pocketbooks that are going to start turning back to Eric Adams. We got our update and then our interview with the CEO of C-SPAN. This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Again, 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Kind of important. Just saying, if there's a gigantic upset in this New York City primary, and you want me to tell you how it happened and why it happened, well, I mean, come on, you gotta get it. You gotta get the bonus episode. It comes out on the morning on Thursdays. You gotta get the bonus episode. It's your first podcast that you listen to each and every week, breaking down everything that's gonna set the frame for the political world that you're following. It's just good for you. And it's good for me because it's money in my pocket. It's a little commerce, though. Come on. I'm giving you value for value, as the old boy Adam Curry likes to say. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Go ahead and head over there. Join our community on Substack. It is a fun time. Now, some of the stories that we did not have a chance to get to. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell told Congress that tariffs may raise prices and the Fed will likely hold interest rates steady to guard against inflation. He emphasized caution, noting inflation has yet to be fully felt from tariffs. President Trump has sharply criticized Powell for not cutting rates, but few lawmakers took Trump's demand to really work over the Fed chair. Powell defended the Fed's stance, stressing that today's inflation dynamics differ from past years. He also warned that reduced immigration is shrinking the labor force, which could also slow economic growth. While some Fed officials are open to cutting rates soon, Powell signaled that the Fed is not rushing unless inflation eases even further or the labor market weakens. A kind of sub-story to this is that there is more of a split on the Fed board than there has been in the past, with I believe 2 out of the 9 saying we should be cutting rates next month. 7 are saying that maybe there's not going to be a rate cut this year. Donald Trump obviously believes that this is a political issue and that rates should be cut ASAP. And here's the reason why. He wants companies to be able to borrow money cheaper. Therefore, that floods into the economy. That can spur growth, especially in certain industries. He also wants people to be able to buy cars, people to be able to buy homes at a cheaper rate. Anytime that you drop rates, it spurs people to go and buy these things. So far, the economy looks pretty good. Obviously, every time we see an inflation report, all eyes are going to be on it, because the question is how these tariffs are going to be priced in. We're going to get back to remember tariffs, because we're going to get back to that. All of this kind of comes together. This is a very themed update. Senate Majority Leader John Thune expects voting on Trump's major, big, beautiful bill to begin Friday in the Senate, potentially extending into the weekend, which would then disrupt the House recess that would be going into the July 4th holiday. The key sticking points are well known: SALT, Medicaid taxes. Thune says that he believes that Congress can meet its July 4th deadline to get that bill on his desk. If they were to do that, it would be threading the needle, because that would mean that if the Senate begins to vote on Friday, that means they still have to go through the vote-a-rama. That's where everybody's able to put any amendment that they want on it. That takes a very long time. It really means that the Senate would wind up voting on this at some point over the weekend, at which point the House now needs to decide whether or not they are going to be the ones that hold it from the president's desk. So they passed their version. That went to the Senate. The Senate, by all of the available reporting, is going to jam the House with whatever the hell they want, up to and including the SALT deduction going from $40,000 to $10,000. Is that going to be what it ends up at? Follow along, friends, for all the latest details. Here's some stuff that will not be in the Senate bill. And this is eliminated by the Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough. The rejected provisions that are stripped out because of the bird bath. Basically, it means the bird bath is a colloquial phrase taken from former Senator Robert Byrd, that a reconciliation bill which can pass on a 50-vote line, they have the ability, they can only involve things that involve the budget. And so the parliamentarian is the one who's determining what in that bill that was sent up from the House is budget related enough to be passed in a reconciliation bill. Here are the rejected provisions. A measure to fast track offshore oil and gas projects by bypassing environmental reviews, mandating lease approvals within 90 days, and to force the construction of Alaska's Ambler Road. She also struck down sections mentioning the sale of federal public land and altering leasing terms for wind, solar, and geothermal energy. These are things that Senate Majority Leader John Thune wanted, and it gives a procedural victory. Rank how important you believe procedural victories are to Democrats, including Senator Jeff Merkley, who praised the rulings, calling the legislation, the big, beautiful betrayal. We have yet to see the end of the parliamentarians' rules, but we will come back to that on our next episode. And finally, many of you might be wondering as we move out of June and into July, like, wait a minute, wasn't that 90-day pause on Liberation Day ending on July 8th? You know, there were like 60 countries that needed to renegotiate their trade deals with the United States, and so far we have one. Seems like 59 countries need to get their act together. Well, this from the White House. The White House is delaying announcements of new trade deals until after Congress passes the Republican domestic big, beautiful bill, according to the National Economics Council Director, Kevin Hassett. Speaking on Fox Business, Hassett said deals with several countries are nearly finalized, but will be unveiled after the big, beautiful bill is completed, likely around July 4th. Again, all of this ties together. Nearly 60 trading partners face steep reciprocal tariffs unless agreements are reached by July 8th, although the administration may well extend the deadline. Hassett claimed trade talks are progressing well despite not naming specific countries. He noted the bill's revenge tax provision targeting nations with digital taxes on U.S. companies is influencing negotiations. Hassett described strong enthusiasm among House Republicans who are preparing to swiftly vote on the big, beautiful bill. I'm here. All right, here. So this is all I know about trade deals. I've heard Australia's close. I've heard India's close. I've heard Japan is close. So when they say that they are delaying or they're going to announce deals, they want a flurry of deals that happen. Those would be the names I would think. The European Union would be a big one. And at that point, everything else, the dominoes kind of fall from there. And now you got to figure out, what happens with China. But now it looks like we are on more of a sustainable footing. So we're not doing a embargo, basically. But India is the one you want to watch. India is the one you want to watch because India gives you a window into a lot of the issues with India are the issues with China. So the deal with India would be the one that you want to see. Who knows what they're talking about? Who knows if they're actually close? If they are, those would be the countries that I think you would probably would be most likely that you would see, at least. And that's your update. Thank you to everybody who supports us at TakePoliticsSeriously.com. And now, our interview with C-SPAN CEO, Sam Feist. It is my honor to welcome to the program the CEO of C-SPAN, Sam Feist, to the program. Welcome, 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 sir. It's an honor to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm a big fan of C-SPAN fans, and there aren't many C-SPAN fans higher on the C-SPAN fan totem pole than Justin Young. So here we are.
Well, that is a very rare distinguishing quality that I will take to my grave. Sam, you are in a very, very interesting position for C-SPAN right now. I know that you are on a tremendous quest for the future of this media company. Can you please explain what the current situation with C-SPAN is in terms of its carriage on streaming platforms?
Sure. So a little bit of background. C-SPAN, 46 years old, was founded as a private nonprofit company to bring the U.S. Congress initially to the American people, because that was something that was new in 1979. Cameras in the Congress didn't exist, and it was founded as a public service by then the cable companies, And so C-SPAN has, over the last 46 years, become a channel on every basic cable and satellite package, from Comcast to Charter Spectrum to DirecTV and all of the other, and many of the, and Verizon Fios, many of the smaller cable companies as well, Dish. And it's everywhere on those services. And we fund ourselves with a tiny little bit of your cable bill. 7.25 cents a month is what goes to C-SPAN. And for that, you get 3 channels: C-SPAN 1, C-SPAN 2, C-SPAN 3. But the most of the streaming services, YouTube TV, Hulu plus Live TV, these are video packages that include CNN and Fox News and Discovery Channel and MTV and all of your basic cable channels. Those 2 big ones, YouTube TV and Hulu plus Live TV, have not carried C-SPAN. And there are some streaming services that do. DirecTV Stream, which you don't need a satellite dish for that. You can get, of course, C-SPAN on those. But Hulu plus Live TV and YouTube TV don't. And so I've been working since I arrived at C-SPAN last year in the fall to do everything I can to have our service available to those Americans who get their news and video packages from those streaming services, because it's not just about the revenue that comes with it, which is important. We're a nonprofit. Our goal is to simply provide our service and keep the lights on, but it's also relevance, meaning if you have YouTube TV, almost certainly you had C-SPAN before you switched. From Xfinity or Spectrum or whichever TV service you had. And so those American households no longer have C-SPAN. And my job as the CEO of C-SPAN is to make this content available as widely as possible. So it's important for both of those reasons.
How long have you been negotiating with Google and now Disney, who own these 2 platforms?
Well, C-SPAN's been talking to them for as long as these platforms have been around. So YouTube TV for 7 years. And I joined C-SPAN in the fall, and I started conversations. And I've had nothing but terrific conversations with the leaders of these platforms, and many, many conversations. And they really have been pleasant and appropriate, but it hasn't really
hasn't been fruitful.
Well, not fruitful if you define fruitful as having customers of these platforms being able to see C-SPAN. But I'm hoping we're making progress. I'm hoping that we're getting closer. I think it's really important. We're the only ones who do what we do. If think about the confirmation hearings of some of the most important and controversial cabinet secretaries this year, all happened at the same time. On the same day, RFK Jr., at the same time, 10 a.m., RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing for HHS Secretary, Kash Patel's confirmation hearing for FBI Director, and Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation hearing for Director of National Intelligence. Very controversial. Wasn't clear that which ones, if any, were going to be passed or not passed through the U.S. Senate. And C-SPAN was the only outlet that had all 3 on C-SPAN 1,
live,
2, and 3 live. If you're a subscriber to one of those streaming platforms that doesn't have C-SPAN, you couldn't see. You might have been able to get bits and pieces from other channels, but we had the real estate to put them on. So we provide a service that nobody else provides, that I'm incredibly proud of, and I want to make sure that more Americans get access to it.
What's the sticking point?
Well, these are private businesses. It does cost money, 7.25 cents a month for those services that provide us. It's the least expensive television channel in the pay TV universe, but it's not free. And also, we don't run ads. If you watch C-SPAN, it's uninterrupted. We don't run ads, and we've had a sense of who might. If we did run ads, who would want to run ads on C-SPAN, those who were trying to influence Congress or the president, lobbying organizations.
Anybody who listens to a political podcast other than us knows, or
Correct.
If you've ever flown into an airport in DC, if you just see you need don't tell your congressman credit cards are good and you have no idea what it really means.
Correct.
Those are the ads that would run.
And we have maintained over our 46 years this remarkably fortunate position and perception as a truly nonpartisan network. We're not government funded. We cover Congress. We don't want to influence Congress. We don't want to be influenced by Congress. We just want to report it and put the events of the U.S. government out there for the viewers and voters to decide who's right and wrong. I think if we turned ourselves into another commercial television network, that would have a negative effect on the perceptions of C-SPAN and our ability to do what we do. So that may be a part of the reason, because TV distributors, all of them, make a lot of money on advertising.
Yeah.
And some portion of every commercial break goes to the distributor, whether they run a local ad or an ad targeted just at Justin Young, or at all, men or women or Toyota drivers.
Yeah. And especially during big campaign seasons where now more and more of that ad spend goes online, that would be dynamically inserted into C-SPAN should that be the decision that is made. And the goal here, and this is something that has now been echoed by Congress multiple times, and that is a big news story that people should be aware of, is that Congress itself would like to secure C-SPAN as public affairs programming on these platforms, is that it remains ad-free, that it is in the state that it is now.
And to be clear, you referenced what Congress did last week. There was a resolution passed in the United States Senate unanimously, all 100 members, to urge streaming platforms to carry C-SPAN, because television is evolving and people get their video content from in different ways now than they used to. But to be clear, it was not a piece of legislation that had a mandate, that had a requirement.
Yeah.
Congress was not regulating streaming services, was not requiring them to carry C-SPAN, was simply urging them to do it because, as was expressed in the Senate resolution, this is an important service, not funded by the government, which I think made plenty of Republicans happy. They're not looking to fund additional things, but they also value our service and view our mission as one that's good for the country. And so that's why they urged the streaming services. It wasn't a Senate resolution, but it wasn't didn't have the force of law and regulation.
And friends, look, this is a great day to be talking to the CEO of C-SPAN, whose tagline is democracy unfiltered, as I believe it is into the double digits of millions, the clip of Donald Trump this morning dropping the F-bomb, discussing a Mideast ceasefire. There are few places that give you unfettered, unfiltered, no talking head access to the government, win, lose, or draw, good, bad, or ugly.
Yeah, I've been watching, I have a whole bunch of televisions in my office, obviously the C-SPAN networks, but I'm also watching all the other news channels and broadcast networks. And we've been running that clip of the 6 minutes the president visited with reporters on the White House South Lawn this morning as he walked out of the White House to head to Marine One for NATO. Yep. We've run it, the whole thing, uninterrupted several times because we think it's important. Other networks may run it initially, but now they've run clips of it. And different networks may run different clips depending on the perspective or the point they're trying to make. And I think that's one of the things that makes C-SPAN special. First, there's a lot of content that no other network ends up running, either because it's our cameras or because it's a hearing that we covered that nobody else covered. But when it comes to the president, what we do that may be different is we run multiple times, because people are not all watching at 6:59 when he walked out. We're going to run that across the day to make sure that people saw it. It was incredibly newsworthy, and he did drop the F-bomb. C-SPAN is not the first time the F-bomb has made it onto C-SPAN. I think Joe Biden dropped the F-bomb, and we have a record of that. So it's not unprecedented, but it's also not common. And that has gotten a fair amount of attention. But I think the newsworthiness of those comments where the president went after both Israel and Iran for what he considered inappropriate ceasefire violations, whatever. I thought that was really newsworthy and really significant. And even beyond the F-bomb, which he dropped.
Yes.
Which is also
it is, to your point, a great example of this presidency in general, who does a lot of gaggles, more than any other president,
more than anyone,
bar none, right?
Mm-hmm.
it gives a lot of room for people to cut out a thing that they like, be it Donald Trump being mean to a reporter that an outlet might want him to be mean to, or from the other perspective, showcasing a boorish thing that they want to showcase. But there's a lot of news that comes out of there. I mean, like he does give access to anybody to ask him any question that's in there. He often waits until everybody's done asking questions before he leaves. Nobody gives you the word for word version other than C-SPAN. I think it is incredibly important to do it. So, friends, go to if you are a YouTube TV subscriber like I am, contact YouTube TV, say that you would like C-SPAN. Market demand is something that these folks respond to. And hopefully there is a resolution to this down the road, because I do think that it is incredibly important. And I know that you guys have been working really hard on it for the last, since the advent of over-the-top streaming platforms.
Yeah, it's important. And, it is, listen, we are funded. We're a nonprofit. We're funded by TV distributors and really by the subscribers to those distributors. So if you are a subscriber to Spectrum, Xfinity, Fios, DirecTV, Dish, thank you, because you're supporting this operation indirectly, of course, by your monthly fee. You wonder sometimes what that cable fee goes to. Well, this is a tiny little bit of what it goes to. But it's also, as I said, we want people to see this content. It makes you a better educated voter. And we really believe in this notion that the American people are smart enough to be able to decide for themselves if they hear from their political leaders in context. They can decide for themselves who's right and wrong, who has the better policy, who they want to support in an election. And if they only get tiny clips that you might get on social media, or that you might get in a short evening newscast, that may not be enough information and context for you to make up your own mind. And so that's what C-SPAN provides.
I want to talk to you about the new programming, because you have come in and you were going to add something new to C-SPAN, something that is not very much in character for the network, that is at a very static, reliable, important lineup that is brought to its viewers. But I want to ask you real quick about your career before you came to C-SPAN. You were at CNN. What is something that you learned from that world that you wanted to bring when you took this job as CEO of C-SPAN?
Yeah, so I spent 30 plus years at CNN, and I traveled all over the world as a producer and as an assignment editor and reporter, and had probably dozens of different jobs at CNN. But I was fortunate enough to start in the early 90s when Ted Turner was in charge. It was his company. And he started CNN as its own mission to bring the world together. And he accomplished that to a large extent. And for Ted, he really believed in this notion that the news is the star. It's not about personality. It's not about what the anchors or reporters think. It's certainly not about opinion. It's about the news. And that kind of original concept of CNN is something that I believed in, still do, and believe that these organizations like CNN and now like C-SPAN have an obligation to try to bring news forward in the most nonpartisan, unbiased, unfiltered way you possibly can. And that was really Ted Turner's goal as he started CNN. And many of the news anchors were not particularly well known, and he was fine with that. That was a good thing. And so to some extent, C-SPAN is similar in that it's really not about us or our talent or our anchors. It really is about the content, whether it's the news or an event or a briefing or hearing from the president or whatever is happening in the world of news and public affairs, particularly American politics and public affairs that day. So I believed in that, and I still do, and it fits C-SPAN rather nicely.
The reason why C-SPAN sticks out, in my opinion, is because it does have that ethos in a way that cable news very much does not. And without going into CNN specifically, because I think that this is endemic across the entire genre, from your perspective as somebody who has been a part of the machine and you understand the meta, why do you think there was that drift from that initial idea of Ted Turner that the news is the star to something where you are creating stars up to and including the fact that there's, rumors of gigantic budget cuts that are going to take big bold-faced names. Many bold-faced names have already left cable networks and started crowding my corner of Substack. But why do you think that happened? Why did it become more partisan? Why did it become more opinionated?
I think it was a drift over time. I think Fox News was the president of Fox News was Roger Ailes, who's a political strategist. He was not a journalist. He was not a lifelong career journalist. And I think he saw a niche that was exploitable of really aiming content, news content directly at conservatives in a way that was unabashedly conservative. And that it was new in the space when Fox News started. MSNBC wasn't originally in that space and then joined it because they found it a niche. And I think it led to a bit of a ideological polarization in the news space, which I think is unfortunate in general. I think there is, I think we as Americans have sorted ourselves in so many ways. Our media consumption, we've sorted ourselves into blue content and red content. We've sorted ourselves into friends and neighborhoods and community organizations in a way that I think is also bad for the country. I think media is just one tiny example of it. And I believe one of the things that's been lost is this notion that we have a shared set of facts, because you can agree or disagree with a president or a senator or a world leader. But if we don't agree on the facts, how do we even have a conversation about it? We have to start with a shared set of facts, and then we can add our opinions and our perspective and maybe the weight of a policy and which policy is a good policy and which policy is a bad policy. But if we don't agree on facts and numbers and budgets and rules of the road, then that's a problem. And I think that the entire media landscape, this is not restricted to cable news, seems to be working off of different facts. And that's even before AI video has gone crazy, where you won't be soon able to trust the video that you think you're seeing with your own eyes, because there's a really good chance it's been created or manipulated by some form of AI. And that leads to misconceptions and also skews the what we thought was an agreed upon set of facts and video. So it's a very complicated world, and cable news is just one tiny little slice of it now.
I think it is very important, to your point with the AI stuff, is that you have to have arbiters for which you trust on some level. And I do think that we're in a very, very interesting place.
Something that C-SPAN actually may be able to help in that front. We have this archive. You can go and find it on the C-SPAN website. That archive is the largest public affairs archive of American public affairs content video over the last 50 years. And why is that significant? Because as we are about to be flooded with manipulated video, mischief makers adding video that looks like Donald Trump said this, or Kamala Harris said this, or Bernie Sanders said this, or you name it, said that, there's a way to check. Because we have the original source. We are the biggest repository of that original source content, and our archive has never been penetrated and has never been corrupted. And we actually keep a copy of it literally buried in Iron Mountain so that nobody can touch that backup copy of all of our material. And that's important because as we begin to trust our video less and less, at least there are some places, and C-SPAN is one of them, I'm proud to say, where the original copy of it still exists, and you can compare it to see if, did she really say that? Did he really say that? It looks like he said it. It certainly seems like he said it. Nope, I'm going to go check. Turns out he didn't say that at all.
Because this is being continually recorded and archived on the C-SPAN archives every single day.
Everything that copied, backed up, buried, protected. But when I say buried, I mean it's literally a backup, fail-safe copy in Iron Mountain, which is kind of like Fort Knox for our video.
Yeah. And also put out to the world in podcast form by Howard Mortman on The Weekly, which is one of my favorite podcasts. Let's talk about the new content offering that is coming to C-SPAN. How long has it been since a new show has debuted on C-SPAN?
It's been a couple of decades since we launched a new series that was intended to last indefinitely. We've done many special series, history series on the Supreme Court, series on the White House. But this is a program that we're going to launch. It's called Ceasefire, that we're going to launch this fall. That is a new series that hopefully will do well and last a long, long time, because I think there's a role for it.
What is the premise?
So the premise is it really started. I used to produce a show at CNN called Crossfire, which was this fun, raucous debate program that had Democrats and Republicans come on, mostly argue, a little bit of shouting. The purpose of which was to really give you a sense of their positions, and their positions were over here, and they were not. They did not meet in the middle very often. The purpose was not to find.
Yeah, this is in an era when political arguing was novel and interesting and rare.
Correct, and it's certainly the mission was not to find common ground or compromise.
No.
But one of the hosts of that program for many years was a very well-known and well-respected progressive named Michael Kinsley. He was the editor of the New Republic and Slate magazine. And when he finished Crossfire, we had lunch, and he said, "Sam, one day I think there's a space for you to produce a program or bring about a program called Ceasefire, where you actually find some agreement." And I had Michael's voice sort of in my ear for 20 years. And I got to C-SPAN and I realized we're in as polarized environment in my lifetime as we've seen in American politics. I'm not going to pretend that this is the most polarized. I think that we could all discuss that, but it's certainly very polarized right now. And there is something that happens in Washington that most people don't see. And that's that Republicans and Democrats frequently do talk. They do have productive conversations. They do quietly co-sponsor legislation. Last month a bill was passed that was sponsored by Marsha Blackburn of
Tennessee, the Republicans.
Tennessee, and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. They don't agree on a lot, but they agreed on that. They agreed on this online privacy and harassment law. And they came together and worked together, and that was, they had to put aside their differences in order to do it. Well, what we're going to do on Ceasefire is create an environment where Democrats and Republicans feel comfortable identifying where they can agree, even on an issue that they might fundamentally disagree on, but they might agree on something, and look for common ground, look for some compromise, and if nothing else, model for the rest of the country good behavior that Democrats and Republicans they can be friends. They can talk. They can have productive conversations. I have, in my 9 months at C-SPAN, I've met with probably 125 members of Congress. And in every conversation, I ask them, who's your best friend on the other side? And every one of them has an answer to that. And some of them said, oh, my best friend in Congress is actually from the other side. Not just my best, say, Democratic friend. My best friend is a Democrat.
Yeah.
And we will work together, and where we agree, we'll connect. And where we disagree, we will advocate for our positions. And I said, would you come on Ceasefire? And I mean, they all say they will. We'll see how many of them actually have the courage to sit and go on national television with someone from the opposite party. But I don't think we're going to have any problem finding important guests for this program.
Do you have your first show booked?
No, we do not have our first show book. We've only just named an executive producer in the last few days, and we'll begin building out the staff. And we have to find a host. Feel free, America, volunteer if you think you're the right host for Ceasefire. You'll be one of the few people, at least in Washington or in the country, who hasn't raised their hand yet. So we're hearing a lot of interesting ideas, but we have not yet booked our first show. We're going to want it to be timely, but we're also going to want it to be to really send the message about what this program is and what it's not.
What would be your dream first show for Ceasefire? Who are the two guests?
If you can promise me a civil conversation, I'll take a couple of presidents or former presidents. I'll have Donald Trump and Barack Obama. I'll take
be a good booking.
Sure, I'll take Bill Clinton and George W. Bush.
Yeah.
Those are actually a perfect example. Those two of two former. They weren't adversaries in that they never really ran against each other.
Yeah.
But they came from different political worlds.
But they get along. They get along well.
They
now.
get along great. Barbara Bush, before she died, was sort of referred to Bill Clinton as that other son because she and George W. Bush worked together on so many things. They raised money for good causes and tsunamis and natural disasters, and both supported George W. Bush's PEPFAR program to help fight AIDS around the developing world. And Bush came to the Clinton Global Initiative, and they've worked together, and they were really a model of how people from different parties can actually get along and do some good. And we want to do that. We're not going to have former presidents all that often. I look forward to having some, but
you'd like to have some.
Of course we would. But whether it's senators or cabinet secretaries or former cabinet secretaries or members of Congress or governors, if there's an opportunity to find some common ground, let's do it. That's the mission of the show. I'm not sure any other network is able to do a program quite like this, but it fits perfectly on C-SPAN.
I would love to see some old rivals too. I would love to see big.
You know how to get in touch with me. I am looking forward to your
Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich. I'm just throwing it out there. Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich.
By the way, who are the last two human beings to come together to balance the budget in the United States?
Those
Bill Clinton
two.
and Newt Gingrich.
Those two.
It was the first time in a generation and the last time in a generation.
Yep.
And before they passed away, who were the two Supreme Court justices who were the closest of friends?
Anthony Scalia? Ginsburg and Scalia. Yeah.
And Ginsburg, right?
Yeah.
They protected their values in the court, inside and outside, but they also agreed with each other and persuaded each other to come to their position, even in court decisions all the time. They were true friends. They vacationed together. They got along, and they believed. They never questioned the other's motives, values, or patriotism. They may have questioned their policy positions.
Yeah.
But I think we need to get away from calling into question someone who might be a member of a different party's values and patriotism. I don't think that's productive for the country.
All right. I know that you guys only add new television shows once every several decades, so this one might take a while, but I do have a pitch. I have a pitch for a show on C-SPAN, all right? And I figured there are only a few times where I'm going to be able to do it.
Go for it.
So I'm in the room now.
I'm promising you no answer in this conversation, just previewing my answer to you.
Okay, good. Yeah. You have sometimes frustration, sometimes said, sometimes unsaid in both the halls of Congress and in the press about leaders of parties that sometimes might be there longer than some folks in the body would like them to be. And I would like to say that there is only one platform that I believe could give the dignity and the ability for elders in their parties to still retain influence and power on affairs of the day. I'm saying another Turner property. I know you came from the Turner world. Inside the NBA, for politicians that have been around the block, know every different version of it. And now you have people, and I'm just going to say, I'm not saying these people need to leave Congress. I'm just saying that this would be my dream. You have your Nancy Pelosi's, you have your Mitch McConnell's, that now they have the ability for the audience on C-SPAN, which wants to download the full idea of how government works. They're not doing sound bites. It's long form. They can get into the details on where this legislation is, who needs to compromise where. And for the first time ever, to get a full download of how these guys, the best vote counters of generations, see legislation. I believe it is a platform that they deserve, and it gives an out so you don't have to stay in Congress forever.
Are you suggesting, Justin, that the inside the Capitol Dome version of this program, we tie it to term limits, that if you agree to leave Congress, you get a seat on you get to be Charles Barkley. Who's Charles Barkley in your estimation?
Oh, man.
Of the ones you mentioned?
It might be Grassley. Grassley
Okay.
might be, he might be. No, actually, no. It would be Kennedy. Kennedy from Louisiana might be. He would be the Charles Barkley. That he's the one that's going to make the clips that will go viral.
Just the
I don't know.
Louisiana connection, you think?
Maybe. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. LSU.
Yeah. So, little trivia. We talked a little bit about streaming services. On June 2nd, 1986, that was the day that C-SPAN's cameras came to life in the United States Senate. It was Chuck Grassley, Senator Chuck Grassley, who was in the presiding officer's chair when and then speakers soon, after the cameras came on and the Senate was in session, we heard from Bob Dole, Republican leader. We heard from Robert Byrd, longtime Democratic leader. We heard from Al Gore, who had become recently a senator in the Senate because he had been a member of Congress, and
he was the first person to reference C-SPAN on the originol broadcast as well, right?
On the very first day of C-SPAN cameras in the House of Representatives, Al Gore spoke with one of the first speakers, and the same thing happened a few years later when the cameras came on in the Senate. So, but it was Chuck Grassley in the chair, and he was the sponsor of the resolution honoring C-SPAN that was passed last week.
Oh, Gore and Bush. That's a great ceasefire episode.
Okay.
Gore and Bush would be great.
Because I know they listen to politics. Vice President Gore and President Bush, let's go ahead and schedule you now.
Well, I'll tell you what, that is a great note to get you out on. Sam, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be on the show. Obviously, huge fan of C-SPAN here on the program, and I think you're doing great stuff with it. Can't wait for Ceasefire. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks for the time, and thanks for being such a fan.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. Our producer is Will Saddleberg. You can send me an email, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Find, follow, and share video clips of the show. TikTok, Justin R. Young. Twitter, Justin R. Young. And YouTube. We're building up the YouTube. We're about to cross into 3,000 subscribers. It's not a lot. It's modest. But you have to help us grow. Like, subscribe, share, follow our shorts. We're putting our shorts out there on TikTok and on YouTube. Sometimes on X when they actually put it out there. Politics. Of course, if you'd like to support us with a one-time donation, you can do so. PayPal.me/paidjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash, and you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715. We love tribute on the show. We love your gifts. So if you'd like to send it to Post Office Box 153184, Austin, Texas 78715, I would love to get it. I check the P.O. Box every single day now because it's right next to my daughter's daycare. So I will get it post haste. Of course, you can always get our bonus content, TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Paying members get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. It's $3 a week, price of a cup of coffee. Cheaper than that for some coffee. Billed as 12 monthly. Or, look, save yourself money. You know you're going to want this. I mean, guys, if you get a yearly subscription right now, it's going to drop you off right in the thick of primaries for the midterms. So we're going to see all the kooks, all the loons that are going to come out of the woodwork, that are going to run for all these House seats. This is the good time. We're going to be out of the dark side of the moon, although it hasn't exactly been barren when it comes to news. But this is the boring year. Imagine when it gets interesting. That's $99 for an entire year. Less than $1 an episode. Basically making money. But of course, it is only at our foundational tier that you get your name read at the end of the podcast, like these fine folks, including a new one. Sonny Black, welcome to the program. L3PO, Peepaw, Scott, Middle-Aged Mike, Tom, Sarah Jeannie, Jeremy, Pro Idiot, Chiller Tomatoes. Oh yeah, it's Adam. Neil, AB Puppy, Dr. Whiskey, Michael, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Will, The Borge B, Matthew, Matt, Andrew, Edwin, Sam, Andrew, Phil, Edison, Devon, Paul, a dog named Truckers, Gloria, my mom, Jerry, Trucker, John, Berkeley, Steven, and Zombie Doc. You want your name read on the show? Only one place to do it. Take politics seriously.com. And that will wrap it up for us today. On Friday's edition of the show, we've got a great interview. A man by the name of David Litt, former Obama speechwriter. He's got a new book about political differences and surfing. I guarantee you, it's a good conversation. Till then, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, still more discuss politics, but this is the only show that dares discuss all three.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Dog and Pony Show audio.